The gunshot that killed Luther Graves in cold blood on a Sunday morning changed everything. But it was the woman holding the smoking pistol who would tear the town of Coolidge, Arizona, apart. Lily Grace stood in the dusty street with her dark hair whipping around her face in the October wind of 1884. The revolver still aimed at the body of the man who had tried to drag her into an alley behind the saloon. Her green eyes blazed with defiance even as her hands began to shake, the reality of what she had done settling into her bones like the desert cold that came with nightfall. She had arrived in Coolidge 3 weeks earlier on the afternoon stage, carrying nothing but a worn carpetbag and enough money to rent a room above the general store for a month. Nobody knew where she came from, and she never offered the information freely. What the town did know was that Luther Graves had been the nephew of Samuel Graves, the wealthiest cattle baron in the territory, and his death would demand an answer that most folks were not willing to hear. The sheriff, a pot-bellied man named Hewitt who owed his position more to Samuel Graves than to any sense of justice, had taken her statement and locked her in a cell despite a dozen witnesses who swore Luther had attacked her first. The next morning, when the circuit judge failed to arrive as scheduled, the whispers began. By Tuesday, those whispers had turned to shouts outside the jailhouse. Samuel Graves wanted her hanged, and he had the money and men to make it happen whether the law agreed or not. The problem was that Coolidge needed Samuel Graves. His ranch employed half the men in town, his cattle filled the stockyards, and his money kept the bank solvent. Without him, Coolidge would dry up and blow away like so much tumbleweed. Lily sat on the thin mattress in her cell and listened to the angry voices outside. She had known this would happen. She had known from the moment she pulled the trigger that nobody would care about the truth. Women like her, women alone without family or husband, were worth less than the cattle in Samuel Graves's pens. She thought about her mother, dead these 5 years from consumption, and her father who had drunk himself into an early grave before that. She thought about the brother she had lost to a fever when they were children and the sister who had married a shopkeeper in Tucson and never looked back. Lily had been running from one town to another for years, trying to find someplace that felt like home, someplace where she could start fresh. She should have known better. There was no such thing as fresh starts for women with her kind of luck. The door to the sheriff's office opened and closed, and Lily heard boots on the wooden floor. She expected Sheriff Hewitt coming to tell her that Samuel Graves had convinced the town council to hold a quick trial without waiting for the judge. Instead, a man she had never seen before appeared at the bars of her cell. He was tall and lean with broad shoulders and sun-darkened skin that spoke of long days working cattle under the Arizona sun. His hair was dark brown, almost black, and fell to just above his collar. He wore worn denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and a black hat pushed back on his head. His eyes were a startling shade of blue-gray, and they studied her with an intensity that made her sit up straighter on the mattress. "You are the woman who shot Luther Graves," he said. It was not a question. "I am," Lily replied, lifting her chin. "He tried to force himself on me. I defended myself." The man nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving her face. "I believe you. Luther Graves was a worthless piece of trash who thought his uncle's money gave him the right to do whatever he pleased to whoever he pleased. You did the world a favor by putting him down." Lily felt something shift in her chest, a small flicker of hope that she immediately tried to extinguish. Hope was dangerous. "Then you are the only person in this town who thinks so." "I am not," the man said. "Most folks know exactly what kind of man Luther was. They just do not have the spine to say it out loud because they are more afraid of Samuel Graves than they are interested in justice." He reached up and pulled his hat off his head, holding it in his hands. "My name is Ryder Dalton. I work for Samuel Graves, or I did until about an hour ago." "You quit?" "Not exactly. I went to the town council meeting this morning. They were discussing what to do about you. Samuel wants you hanged, and most of the council was ready to give him what he wanted. I told them that if they railroaded you into a noose without a fair trial, I would leave Coolidge and I would take every good cowboy I could convince with me." Ryder's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. "Turns out, I have some influence around here. I have been the foreman at the Graves Ranch for 3 years. Before that, I worked my way up from a regular hand. The men respect me, and Samuel knows it. Without me and the men who would follow me, his ranch would fall apart inside a month." Lily stood up from the mattress and walked to the bars, her fingers wrapping around the cold iron. "Why would you do that for me? You do not even know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Ryder said simply. "And because I am tired of watching Samuel Graves run this town like his own personal kingdom. His money does not give him the right to decide who lives and who dies." "What did the council say?" "They agreed to wait for the circuit judge. He should be here in a week. They also agreed that you would get a fair trial with a proper defense." Samuel was furious, but he backed down. "He needs me more than he wants revenge for his nephew, at least for now." Ryder met her eyes through the bars. "That gives us 1 week to make sure the truth comes out. I am going to talk to every witness who saw what happened. I am going to make sure their testimony is on record and that they are willing to speak up in court. And if Samuel Graves threatens them, if he tries to buy their silence, then I will make it clear that their jobs and their safety are more secure with me than with him," Ryder said. His voice was calm, but Lily could hear the steel underneath. This was a man who kept his promises, for better or worse. "You are not going to hang Lily Grace. I give you my word." Lily wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that there was still justice in this world, that one man's courage could stand against the weight of money and influence. But she had been disappointed too many times before. "Your word might not be enough. It will have to be," Ryder said. He put his hat back on his head and tipped it to her, a gesture that was oddly formal given the circumstances. "I will be back tomorrow. Try to get some rest." He turned and walked away before she could respond, leaving her alone in the cell with her thoughts and the faint sound of angry voices still rumbling outside. Lily sat back down on the mattress and drew her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. She did not know what to make of Ryder Dalton. Men like him, men who stood up for what was right even when it cost them something, were rare as hen's teeth in her experience. She had met plenty of men who talked a good game but backed down the moment things got difficult. She had met even more men who looked at her with hunger or contempt or both, who saw her as something to be used and discarded. Ryder had looked at her like she was a person, like her life actually mattered. It was such a novel experience that she did not quite know how to process it. The week that followed was the longest of Lily's life. Ryder came to see her every day, sometimes twice a day, to update her on his progress. He had tracked down 17 witnesses who had seen Luther Graves grab her and try to drag her into the alley. He had gotten 12 of them to give sworn statements to a lawyer he had hired out of his own pocket. The other 5 were too afraid of Samuel Graves to put their names on paper, but Ryder was still working on them. He brought her books to read and decent food from the hotel dining room, and he sat on the other side of the bars and talked to her like they were old friends catching up over coffee. Lily learned that Ryder was 27 years old, 5 years older than her own 22. He had grown up on a small ranch in Texas, the youngest of 4 brothers. His father had died when he was 16, and his mother had remarried a man who treated her well, but had no use for her grown sons. Ryder had left home at 17 and drifted west, working cattle drives and ranch jobs wherever he could find them. He had ended up in Coolidge 3 years ago and had impressed Samuel Graves with his work ethic and his skill with horses. Samuel had made him foreman within a year, and Ryder had turned the Graves Ranch into the most profitable operation in the territory. He had saved most of his wages and was planning to buy his own land someday, start his own ranch. He wanted something that was his, something he could build with his own 2 hands. "Why did you never marry?" Lily asked him one afternoon. They were sitting on opposite sides of the bars, and the sun slanting through the high window cast golden light across his face. Ryder shrugged. "Never found the right woman, I suppose. Ranch work does not leave much time for courting, and most of the women I have met were either already spoken for or not interested in a cowboy with more ambition than money." He looked at her with those blue-gray eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses. "What about you? No husband waiting for you somewhere?" "No," Lily said. "I was engaged once back in New Mexico. His name was Thomas. We were supposed to be married in the spring of 1882. Then he decided he would rather marry the banker's daughter instead. She came with a dowry and a house and all the respectability I could never offer." The old hurt had dulled with time, but it still stung when she poked at it. "I left town the next day. I have been moving around ever since." "His loss," Ryder said quietly. "Any man fool enough to choose money over you deserves what he gets." Lily felt her cheeks flush and looked away. She was not used to compliments, especially not from men who actually seemed to mean them. "You do not know me well enough to say that." "I know you well enough," Ryder said. "You have courage. You have integrity. You defended yourself when you had every right to do so, and you have not tried to run or hide from the consequences even though you are scared half to death. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." The circuit judge arrived on a Tuesday, a week to the day after Lily had killed Luther Graves. His name was Horace Blackwell, and he was a stern-faced man in his 50s with silver hair and sharp black eyes that missed nothing. The trial was held in the Coolidge Town Hall, which was really just a large room above the general store with benches and a makeshift podium. Half the town showed up to watch, including Samuel Graves, who sat in the front row with his arms crossed over his chest and a look on his face that promised retribution. Ryder sat on the opposite side of the room, and when Lily was led in by Sheriff Hewitt, Ryder caught her eye and gave her a small nod. She took strength from that simple gesture and held her head high as she sat down at the defendant's table next to the lawyer Ryder had hired. His name was Jonathan Pierce, and he was a young man fresh from law school in California with more idealism than experience. Lily was not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. The trial lasted 2 days. The prosecutor, a friend of Samuel Graves named Clifford Winters, painted Lily as a dangerous woman with a history of moving from town to town, a woman without roots or morals who had seduced Luther Graves and then killed him when he rejected her advances. It was a ridiculous story that contradicted the facts, but Winters told it with enough conviction that Lily could see some of the jury members nodding along. Then Jonathan Pierce stood up and called his witnesses. One by one, 12 men and women took the stand and testified under oath that they had seen Luther Graves grab Lily, had seen him try to drag her into the alley, had heard her scream for help. They testified that Luther had been drunk and belligerent, that he had a reputation for being rough with women, that Lily had acted in self-defense. Samuel Graves's face grew darker with each testimony, but there was nothing he could do. The witnesses were on record, their words spoken in open court in front of Judge Blackwell. When it was Lily's turn to take the stand, she told the truth in a clear, steady voice. She described how Luther had cornered her outside the saloon, how he had grabbed her wrist and twisted her arm behind her back, how he had whispered vile things in her ear as he tried to force her into the alley. She described how she had managed to pull the pistol she always carried from her pocket, how she had fired once in desperation, how Luther had fallen, and she had stood there shaking with the gun still in her hand. "Why do you carry a pistol, Miss Grace?" Judge Blackwell asked. "Because I am a woman alone in the world, Your Honor," Lily said. "I have learned that I cannot always rely on others to protect me. I have to protect myself." Judge Blackwell nodded slowly, and Lily thought she saw a flicker of sympathy in those sharp eyes. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning with a verdict of justifiable homicide. Lily was free to go. The relief that washed over her was so intense that her knees nearly buckled, and she had to grip the edge of the table to keep herself upright. Ryder was beside her in an instant, his hand steadying her elbow. "You are safe now," he murmured. "It is over." But it was not over. Samuel Graves stood up from his seat and pointed a shaking finger at Lily. "This is not finished," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "That woman murdered my nephew, and she is going to pay for it one way or another. And you," he turned his fury on Ryder, "you are finished in this town. I will make sure of it." "I already quit your ranch," Ryder said calmly. "You cannot fire a man who does not work for you anymore." "You will regret this," Samuel spat. "All of you will regret this." He stormed out of the town hall, and the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with conversation. Lily stood frozen in place, the reality of her situation sinking in. She might be free in the eyes of the law, but Samuel Graves was not the kind of man to let something like this go. He would make her life in Coolidge impossible, and he would make Ryder pay for standing against him. As if reading her thoughts, Ryder leaned closer. "Pack your things. We are leaving town tonight." "We?" Lily looked at him in surprise. "You cannot stay here," Ryder said. "Samuel will make sure you never work, never have a moment's peace, and I have no intention of staying either. I told you I was planning to start my own ranch someday. I have enough money saved up to buy land and cattle. I was thinking somewhere north of here, up near Prescott. Good grazing land, plenty of water. It is a new start for both of us if you are willing." Lily stared at him, her heart pounding. "You want me to come with you?" "I do," Ryder said. His blue-gray eyes were steady on hers. "I know we have only known each other for a week, but I feel like I know you better than people I have known for years. You are strong and brave, and you deserve a chance at a real life, not running from town to town trying to survive. Come with me. Help me build something worth having." "As what?" Lily asked, hardly daring to hope. "Your housekeeper, your cook," "As my partner," Ryder said. "As my wife, if you will have me." Lily felt the world tilt on its axis. "You are asking me to marry you. I know it is fast," Ryder said. "I know you have every reason to be cautious, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I want you, Lily Grace. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are beside me. I want to build a future with you. Say yes." Lily looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and hope. This man had risked everything for her, a stranger, because it was the right thing to do. He had stood up to Samuel Graves and the entire town on her behalf. He had given her his word that she would not hang, and he had kept it. If she could trust anyone in this world, it was Ryder Dalton. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." The smile that broke across Ryder's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He took her hand in his calloused fingers warm and strong around hers. "We will get married tonight before we leave. I want it legal and proper. I want everyone to know you are mine and I am yours." They found a preacher willing to perform the ceremony in his parlor, a kindly old man named Reverend Walsh who asked no questions and offered his blessings freely. Lily wore the only decent dress she owned, a simple blue calico that matched her eyes, and Ryder stood beside her in his cleanest shirt and his good hat. There were no guests, no flowers, no music. Just the two of them and Reverend Walsh, and the words that would bind them together for the rest of their lives. When Ryder slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, Lily felt tears slip down her cheeks. She had never expected to have this, never dared to hope that someone would want her enough to make this kind of commitment. "You may kiss your bride," Reverend Walsh said, smiling. Ryder cupped Lily's face in his hands and kissed her gently, his lips warm and soft against hers. It was a sweet kiss, a promise of more to come, and Lily felt something deep inside her chest crack open. She had been alone for so long, carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Now she had someone to share that weight, someone who chose her not because he had to, but because he wanted to. They left Coolidge that night on horseback, their few possessions packed in saddlebags. Ryder had bought a sturdy mare for Lily, a dappled gray with kind eyes, and he rode his own buckskin gelding that he had owned for 3 years. They rode north under a sky full of stars, the October air crisp and cool against their faces. Lily kept glancing over at Ryder, still not quite believing that this was real, that she was married to this man who had appeared in her life like some kind of guardian angel. They stopped to make camp around midnight in a sheltered canyon with a small creek running through it. Ryder built a fire while Lily tended to the horses, and then they sat together on a blanket and ate cold biscuits and jerky. The firelight played across Ryder's features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw and the weariness in his eyes. He had given up everything for her, walked away from a good job and a secure future because he believed in doing what was right. Lily reached out and touched his hand, threading her fingers through his. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything you have done for me. I do not know how I will ever repay you." Ryder turned his hand over and squeezed her fingers. "You do not owe me anything, Lily. I did what I did because I wanted to, because I could not stand by and watch an injustice happen. And I asked you to marry me because I wanted you, not because I expected anything in return." "Still," Lily said, "I want you to know that I am grateful. And I promise I will do everything I can to be a good wife to you, to help you build the life you want." "I know you will," Ryder said. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "We are in this together now, for better or worse." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of a coyote. Then Ryder stood and spread out their bedrolls side by side, close enough that they could reach for each other in the night. Lily lay down and looked up at the stars, feeling the warmth of Ryder's body next to hers. It was strange and wonderful to not be alone anymore, to have someone who cared whether she lived or died. "Ryder," she said into the darkness. "Yes, I am afraid," Lily admitted. "I am afraid that Samuel Graves will come after us, that this will all fall apart, that I will wake up and discover this was just a dream." Ryder rolled onto his side and propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "I am afraid too," he said honestly, "but fear is just part of living. The key is not to let it control you. We will face whatever comes together and we will be stronger for it." Lily reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw. "How did you get to be so wise?" "I am not wise," Ryder said with a soft laugh. "I just learned early on that life is too short to waste on things that do not matter. You matter, Lily. We matter. Everything else is just noise." He leaned down and kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. Lily felt heat bloom in her belly and spread through her limbs. She had been kissed before, but never like this, never with such tenderness and hunger combined. Ryder's hand slid into her hair, cradling the back of her head, and Lily pressed closer to him, wanting more. She wanted to lose herself in him, to forget about Samuel Graves and the trial and everything that had happened. She wanted to feel alive and safe and loved. Ryder pulled back slightly, his breathing ragged. "We should stop." "Why?" Lily asked, her own breath coming fast. "Because you have been through hell this past week, and I do not want you to do anything you are not ready for," Ryder said. His eyes searched hers in the firelight. "I can wait, Lily. We have all the time in the world." Lily's heart swelled with affection for this man who was more concerned about her well-being than his own desires. "I do not want to wait," she said. "I want you, Ryder. I want to be your wife in every way." Something fierce and possessive flashed in Ryder's eyes. "Are you sure?" "I am sure," Lily said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Ryder kissed her again, and this time he did not pull away. His hands were gentle as he undressed her, his touch reverent as he explored her body. Lily had never been with a man before, and she was nervous, but Ryder was patient and careful, taking his time to make sure she was comfortable. When he finally moved inside her, there was a moment of pain that made her gasp, but Ryder stilled immediately, his forehead pressed against hers. "Do you want me to stop?" he whispered. "No," Lily said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Do not stop." The pain faded, replaced by a warmth that spread through her entire body. Ryder moved slowly at first, then faster as Lily began to match his rhythm. She had never felt anything like this connection that went beyond physical pleasure into something almost spiritual. When they finally came apart together, Lily cried out his name and clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that was constantly shifting beneath her feet. Afterward, they lay tangled together under the blanket, their bodies slick with sweat despite the cool night air. Ryder pressed a kiss to her temple and pulled her close, tucking her head under his chin. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it is too soon to say it, but it is the truth." "I love you, Lily Dalton." Lily felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were happy tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could fall in love this fast, but here we are." Ryder chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Here we are." They slept curled together, and for the first time in longer than Lily could remember, she did not have nightmares. She dreamed, instead of a house with a porch and chickens scratching in the yard, of children laughing and running through tall grass, of growing old beside the man who had chosen her when no one else would. The journey to Prescott took them 5 days of steady riding. They traveled through desert scrub and pine forests, through canyons carved by ancient rivers and valleys that stretched out green and inviting. Ryder told her stories about the land, about the people who had lived here long before white settlers arrived, about the cattle drives he had worked and the places he had seen. Lily told him about her childhood in New Mexico, about her mother's gentle hands and her father's descent into drink, about the dreams she had once had of being a schoolteacher before life had knocked her down too many times. They stopped in small towns along the way to buy supplies, and Lily noticed the way people looked at them. A married couple traveling together was unremarkable, but there was something about the way Ryder held himself, the way he kept a protective hand on the small of her back, that seemed to warn off anyone who might think of causing trouble. Lily felt safer than she had in years. When they finally arrived in Prescott, Lily fell in love with the town immediately. It was nestled in a valley surrounded by mountains, with tall ponderosa pines and clear streams, and air that smelled of juniper and sage. The town itself was busy and prosperous, with a courthouse and several hotels and a main street lined with shops. Ryder led her to a land office, where he inquired about properties for sale. The clerk, a balding man with spectacles, showed them a map of the surrounding area and pointed out several parcels that might suit their needs. "This one here," the clerk said, tapping a spot on the map, "is about 15 miles northeast of town. 500 acres, good grazing land, a creek that runs year-round, and a small cabin already built on the property. Previous owner moved back east after his wife died. He is willing to sell for a fair price." Ryder looked at Lily, one eyebrow raised in question. She nodded eagerly, and Ryder turned back to the clerk. "We would like to see it." They rode out the next morning and found the property exactly as described. The cabin was small and rough, just 2 rooms with a stone fireplace and a dirt floor, but it was solid and weatherproof. The land rolled out in gentle hills covered with grass and wildflowers, and the creek sparkled in the sunlight. Lily could see cattle grazing here, could imagine a garden near the cabin and maybe a chicken coop and a barn. It was perfect. "What do you think?" Ryder asked, standing beside her with his hands on his hips. "I think it is everything we need," Lily said. "I think we could build a life here." Ryder grinned and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she laughed breathlessly. "Then it is ours." They bought the land with most of Ryder's savings, and then they set to work making it a home. Ryder used the rest of his money to buy a small herd of cattle and some chickens and a milk cow. He hired 2 young cowboys from town, brothers named Tommy and Jack, who were eager for steady work and willing to follow Ryder's lead. Lily worked from dawn until dusk, planting a garden, fixing up the cabin, learning how to cook over an open fire and churn butter, and all the 100 other tasks that came with living on a ranch. It was hard work, harder than anything Lily had ever done, but it was also deeply satisfying. Every fence post Ryder drove into the ground, every row of vegetables Lily planted, every calf born healthy and strong was proof that they were building something real. The cabin might be small and the work might be backbreaking, but it was theirs. Nobody could take it away from them. As the weeks turned into months, Lily and Ryder fell into a rhythm. They woke with the sun and worked until their muscles ached, and then they fell into bed exhausted but happy. Ryder taught Lily how to ride better, how to rope a calf, how to read the sky for weather. Lily taught Ryder how to appreciate a good book, how to find joy in small things like wildflowers and bird songs. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's quirks and habits, building a foundation of trust and respect that went deeper than physical attraction. In December, Lily realized she had missed her monthly cycle. She waited another week to be sure, and then she told Ryder one evening after supper. He was sitting by the fire whittling a piece of wood, and he looked up when she spoke, his eyes widening. "Are you certain?" he asked. "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor," Lily said. She was nervous about his reaction. They had only been married for 2 months. A baby was a huge responsibility, and they were still struggling to get the ranch on solid footing. Ryder set down his whittling knife and crossed the cabin in 3 long strides. He pulled Lily into his arms and held her tight, his face buried in her hair. "A baby," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Lily asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "Happy?" Ryder pulled back and looked down at her, his eyes shining. "Lily, I am over the moon. I know the timing is not perfect, but when is it ever? We will figure it out. We always do." Lily felt relief wash over her, and she smiled up at him. "We are going to be parents." "We are," Ryder said, and then he kissed her with such tenderness that Lily felt her heart might burst from her chest. The winter passed slowly. Lily's belly grew round, and Ryder fussed over her like a mother hen, insisting she rest more and lift less. Lily found it both endearing and exasperating, but she loved him for it. In March, when the snows began to melt and the first green shoots appeared in the garden, Lily went into labor. Ryder rode into town to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson, who had delivered half the babies in the territory. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Lily thought she might not survive it. But Ryder stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and wiping her forehead and murmuring encouragement. And finally, as the sun rose on a new day, their son was born. He was small and red-faced and perfect, with a thatch of dark hair and blue-gray eyes like his father's. Lily held him to her chest and wept with exhaustion and joy, and Ryder looked down at both of them with such love on his face that Lily knew she would remember that moment for the rest of her life. "What should we name him?" Ryder asked, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "What about James?" Lily suggested. "After your father." Ryder's eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "James Dalton, I like that. Little James was a good baby, all things considered. He slept in short bursts and nursed hungrily, and he had a pair of lungs that could wake the dead when he was upset." Lily was exhausted all the time, but she had never been happier. Watching Ryder with their son was a revelation. He was gentle and patient, rocking James to sleep in the middle of the night, singing him silly songs while he changed his diaper, carrying him around the ranch in a sling so Lily could get some work done. Ryder had been born to be a father, and it showed in everything he did. The ranch continued to grow. By the time James was a year old, they had doubled their herd and built a proper barn and added a second room to the cabin. Tommy and Jack had proven themselves reliable, and Ryder had hired 2 more hands to help with the increased workload. Lily had expanded her garden and started selling vegetables in town, bringing in a little extra money. They were not rich by any means, but they were comfortable and, more importantly, they were happy. One afternoon in the summer of 1886, Lily was hanging laundry on the line behind the cabin when she saw a rider approaching. She shaded her eyes against the sun and felt her heart sink as she recognized the figure. It was Samuel Graves. He rode up to the cabin and dismounted slowly, his movements stiff with age and anger. Lily called for Ryder, and he emerged from the barn with James perched on his hip. "What do you want, Samuel?" Ryder asked, his voice cold. Samuel looked at them, his gaze lingering on James. "I heard you had a child." "What of it?" "I came to tell you that I was wrong," Samuel said, and the words seemed to cost him dearly. "Wrong about the trial, wrong about your wife, wrong about a lot of things. My nephew was a worthless drunk who got what was coming to him. I have known that for a long time, but I was too proud to admit it. I let my pride nearly destroy an innocent woman, and I drove away the best foreman I ever had." Ryder stared at him, clearly shocked. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I am dying," Samuel said bluntly. "Cancer, the doctors say. I have maybe 6 months if I am lucky. And I do not want to die knowing I left things the way they were. I owe you an apology, both of you. And I owe you more than that." He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope, holding it out to Ryder. "That is a bank draft for $10,000. It is the least I can do to make up for what I put you through." Ryder took the envelope but did not open it. "I do not want your money, Samuel." "Then think of it as an investment in your ranch," Samuel said. "You are doing good work here. Everyone in Prescott speaks highly of you. You have built something worth having, and I want to help you keep building it. Call it my way of trying to set things right before I meet my maker." Lily stepped forward, her hand on Ryder's arm. "Thank you, Mr. Graves," she said quietly. "Your apology means more than the money." Samuel nodded, his old eyes tired. "I am sorry, Mrs. Dalton, truly sorry. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive an old fool." "I forgive you," Lily said, and she meant it. Holding on to anger and bitterness would only poison her own happiness. Samuel Graves had tried to destroy her, but he had failed. She had survived, and she had built a beautiful life in spite of him. That was the best revenge she could ask for. Samuel Graves rode away, and Ryder opened the envelope. Inside was indeed a bank draft for $10,000, a fortune by their standards. Ryder looked at Lily, and she saw the question in his eyes. "We should keep it," she said. "Use it to expand the ranch, maybe buy more land. He is right. It is an investment in our future." Ryder nodded slowly. "All right. But I want to use some of it to help Tommy and Jack buy their own land someday, and maybe set aside some for James's education. I do not want this money to change who we are." "It will not," Lily promised. "We will always be us, no matter how much money we have or do not have." They used the money wisely, buying an additional 500 acres and a second herd of cattle. They hired more hands and built a proper house to replace the cabin, a 2-story structure with a wide porch and glass windows and enough room for their growing family. In 1887, Lily gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose. She had Lily's dark hair and Ryder's blue-gray eyes, and she was as fierce and stubborn as both her parents combined. In 1889, another daughter arrived, a sweet-tempered girl they named Clara, and in 1891, a third son they named Samuel, after the man who had tried to destroy them but had ultimately helped them build their dream. The years passed in a blur of hard work and laughter and love. Lily watched her children grow, watched James learn to ride and rope alongside his father, watched Rose demand to do everything her brothers did and then do it better, watched Clara tend to injured animals with gentle hands, watched little Samuel follow Ryder around like a shadow. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Ryder and Lily became pillars of the community, known for their generosity and their fairness. They employed dozens of people over the years, always treating their workers with respect and paying them a fair wage. In 1897, Lily stood on the porch of their house and looked out over the land they had built together. James was 15 now, tall and strong and so much like his father it made her heart ache. Rose was 10, already showing signs of becoming a formidable woman. Clara was 8, sweet and kind and beloved by everyone who met her. Samuel was 6, full of energy and mischief. They were good kids, happy and healthy, and Lily knew she and Ryder had done right by them. Ryder came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am," Lily said, leaning back against him. "How lucky we are. If someone had told me 13 years ago that I would end up here, with you and our children and this beautiful life, I would not have believed them." "I would have," Ryder said. "From the moment I saw you in that jail cell, I knew you were meant for something more than what that town wanted to give you. I knew we were meant for something more." Lily turned in his arms and looked up at him. His face was more weathered now, his hair showing threads of gray at the temples, but his eyes were the same blue-gray that had captivated her from the first. "You saved my life, you know, in every way that matters." "And you saved mine," Ryder said. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, slow and sweet. "I love you, Lily Dalton. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Lily whispered against his lips, "always and forever." They stood there together on the porch, watching the sun set over the land they had carved out of the wilderness through sheer determination and love. Their children's laughter drifted up from the yard, and Lily felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. This was what she had been searching for all those years, moving from town to town trying to find a place where she belonged. She had found it not in a place but in a person, in the cowboy who had stood up for her when no one else would, who had looked at her and seen not a problem to be solved but a woman worth fighting for. The years continued to roll by, bringing their share of challenges and triumphs. There were droughts that tested their resilience and harsh winters that took a toll on the herd. There were illnesses and injuries, close calls that reminded them how fragile life could be. But through it all, Lily and Ryder faced everything together, drawing strength from each other and from the family they had built. James grew into a fine young man and took over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch, working alongside his father with the same dedication and integrity that Ryder had always shown. He married a schoolteacher from Prescott in 1902, a smart young woman named Emma who fit into the family like she had always been there. They gave Lily and Ryder their first grandchild in 1903, a boy they named Ryder in honor of his grandfather. Rose proved to be as stubborn and independent as Lily had predicted. She refused several marriage proposals, declaring that she had no interest in being anyone's wife if it meant giving up her freedom. Instead, she became a skilled horse trainer, earning a reputation throughout the territory for her ability to gentle even the wildest Mustang. She eventually married a fellow horse trainer when she was 28, a quiet man named Daniel who understood and respected her need for independence. Clara married young to a rancher's son from a neighboring property, and she and her husband built their own small ranch adjacent to the Dalton land. She had 5 children in quick succession and was the most devoted mother Lily had ever seen, always patient and kind even when her little ones were driving her to distraction. Samuel, the youngest, surprised everyone by announcing at 18 that he wanted to go to university and study law. Lily and Ryder supported his decision, using the money they had saved over the years to send him to school in San Francisco. He came back with a degree and opened a practice in Prescott, where he became known as a fierce advocate for those who could not afford fancy lawyers, just as his mother had once been unable to afford proper representation. By 1910, Lily and Ryder were in their late 40s, still running the ranch but gradually handing over more responsibility to James and the other hands they had trained over the years. They had earned the right to slow down a little, to spend more time with their grandchildren and each other. Lily had taken up painting, something she had always wanted to try, and the walls of their house were covered with her landscapes of the Arizona mountains and valleys. Ryder had more time for the woodworking he loved, crafting beautiful furniture that Lily filled their home with. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Ryder reached over and took Lily's hand. "Do you ever think about that day in Coolidge, when everything changed?" "Sometimes," Lily admitted. "It feels like another lifetime, like it happened to different people." "In a way it did," Ryder said. "We were different then. Younger, more uncertain, but the core of who we were, that has not changed. You were brave and strong then, and you are brave and strong now. I was determined to do right by you then, and I am still determined to do right by you now." Lily squeezed his hand. "We have had a good life, have we not?" "The best life," Ryder said. "Better than I ever dreamed possible, and it is not over yet. We still have years ahead of us, years to spoil our grandchildren and watch our children thrive and just enjoy being together." "I look forward to every single one of those years," Lily said. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you, Ryder, for choosing me, for standing up for me, for loving me." "Thank you for saying yes," Ryder replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "For taking a chance on a cowboy with more dreams than sense, for building this life with me." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue, the first stars beginning to appear. From inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren laughing, visiting for the weekend. The sound filled Lily with contentment. This was legacy, she thought. Not just the land and the cattle and the house, but the love and the laughter and the family they had created. This was what mattered. In the years that followed, Lily and Ryder continued to live their lives with the same grace and love that had always defined them. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, welcomed new grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They weathered the changes that came with the new century, the automobiles and telephones and other modern conveniences that slowly made their way to the Arizona territory. They watched Arizona achieve statehood in 1912 and marveled at how much the world had changed since they first arrived in Prescott all those years ago. Through it all, their love remained constant. They still held hands while walking to the creek, still stole kisses when they thought no one was looking, still talked late into the night about their dreams and fears and hopes. They had built something that would outlast them, something that would continue through their children and grandchildren and all the generations to come. But more than that, they had found in each other a home, a safe harbor in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. When Lily thought back to that day in Coolidge, when she had stood in the street with a smoking gun in her hand and no idea what the future would hold, she was grateful for every twist of fate that had brought her to this moment. She was grateful for Luther Graves's attack, as horrible as it had been, because it had brought Ryder into her life. She was grateful for the trial and for Samuel Graves's threats, because they had forced her and Ryder to leave and build something new. She was grateful for every hardship and challenge, because they had all led her here, to this porch, to this man, to this life. One warm spring evening in 1920, Lily and Ryder sat together on their porch as they had done countless times before. They were both in their late 50s now, their hair more gray than not, their faces lined with the evidence of years spent under the sun. But they were still strong, still healthy, still deeply in love. Their children were all settled with families of their own, and the ranch was thriving under James's capable management. They had done everything they set out to do and more. "Do you have any regrets?" Lily asked, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Ryder thought for a moment, then shook his head. "Not a one. Every choice I made, every path I took led me to you. How could I regret any of it? Not even leaving Samuel Graves's ranch. You could have stayed, made peace with him, kept your position. And watch you hang or run." Ryder said, turning to look at her. "Never. I would make the same choice 100 times over, 1,000 times. You were worth more than any job, any amount of money or security. You still are." Lily felt tears prick her eyes, even after all these years. "I am so glad you walked into that jail cell, so glad you stood up for me." "I am glad you said yes when I asked you to marry me," Ryder replied. "I was terrified you would turn me down." "I could never have turned you down," Lily said. "You were offering me everything I had ever wanted. A home, a partner, a future. How could I say no to that?" Ryder pulled her close, and they sat together in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the sounds of the ranch settling in for the night. The cattle lowing in the distance, the horses shifting in their stalls, the crickets beginning their evening song. It was the symphony of the life they had built, and it was the most beautiful music Lily had ever heard. As the years went on, Lily and Ryder aged gracefully, their love never dimming. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary in 1924, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. It was a joyous occasion, full of laughter and stories and toasts to the couple who had built such an incredible legacy. Lily looked around at all the faces, seeing pieces of herself and Ryder in every one of them, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the life she had been given. Ryder stood and raised his glass. "I want to say something," he announced, his voice still strong despite his years. 40 years ago, I met a woman in a jail cell in Coolidge. She had just defended herself against a man who meant to harm her, and the town wanted to see her hang for it. I looked at her and saw courage and dignity and strength, and I knew I could not let injustice win. So I stood up. I told that town that if they went through with their plans, I would leave, and I would take every good cowboy I could convince with me. I told them they needed me more than they wanted revenge. He paused, looking down at Lily with so much love in his eyes that she felt her throat tighten. But the truth is, I needed her more than they needed me. Lily Dalton has been my partner, my friend, my love, and my life for 40 years. She has given me 4 beautiful children, more grandchildren than I can count, and a home that is more than just a place. It is a feeling, a sense of belonging that I never had before I met her. So I want to raise a glass to my wife, the woman who said yes when I asked her to take a chance on me, who has stood by my side through every challenge and every triumph. To Lily, the love of my life. To Lily. Everyone chorused, raising their glasses. Lily stood and hugged Ryder, not caring that everyone was watching. "I love you," she whispered in his ear. "Thank you for giving me this life. Thank you for sharing it with me," Ryder whispered back. They danced that night under the stars, moving slowly to music played on a fiddle by one of their grandchildren. Lily rested her head on Ryder's chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart, the same heart that had chosen her all those years ago, that had never wavered in its devotion. She thought about the girl she had been in Coolidge, scared and alone and certain that her life was over. She thought about the woman she had become, strong and loved and surrounded by family. The journey between those two people had not been easy, but it had been worth every step. As the night wore on and the party wound down, Lily and Ryder retreated to their bedroom. They lay together in the darkness, their bodies fitting together as naturally as they always had. Ryder traced lazy patterns on Lily's arm, and she sighed contentedly. "I hope we have many more years together," she said softly. "We will," Ryder promised. "I am not ready to leave you yet. I plan on being a thorn in your side for a good long while." Lily laughed. "You have never been a thorn in my side. You have been my salvation." "And you have been mine," Ryder said. He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. "Sleep now, my love. Tomorrow is another day, and we will face it together as we have faced every other day." Lily closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that she was loved, that she was home, that she had found her place in the world. The town of Coolidge had wanted her gone, had been ready to see her hang for defending herself. But a cowboy had stood up and said, "She stays or I go, and I think you need me more." He had risked everything for her, and in doing so he had given her everything. A life, a home, a family, a love that would endure long after they were both gone. And as Lily slept, wrapped in Ryder's arms, she dreamed of the future their great-grandchildren would build, of the stories that would be told about the woman who had stood her ground and the man who had stood beside her, of the legacy of courage and love that would echo through generations. The Dalton ranch would continue long after they were gone, but more than that, the love they had built would continue, passed down from parent to child, a testament to the power of choosing to stand up for what is right, to fight for those you love, and to never give up on the possibility of a better tomorrow. The sun rose on another day in Arizona, casting golden light across the land that Lily and Ryder had made their own. The cattle grazed peacefully, the horses ran free in the pasture, and the house stood strong and welcoming. Inside, Lily and Ryder woke together as they had done for 40 years, ready to face whatever the day might bring, knowing that as long as they had each other, they could handle anything. This was their legacy. Not just the land or the wealth or the family name, but the love that had sustained them through every trial, every challenge, every joy. It was a love that had started in the most unlikely of circumstances, born from injustice and desperation, but it had grown into something beautiful and enduring. It was a love that had defied the odds, overcome obstacles, and built something lasting and true. And when Lily and Ryder eventually passed, many years later, they went knowing that they had lived their lives fully and completely, that they had loved deeply and without reservation, that they had built something worth building. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land and the family they had created. And if you stood on that hill on a quiet evening, you might almost imagine you could see them still, walking hand in hand through the grass, their love as strong in death as it had been in life. The Dalton family continued to thrive, generation after generation, always remembering the story of how it all began. They told the tale of Lily Grace, who had defended herself and faced down a town that wanted her dead, and Ryder Dalton, who had stood up and said, "She stays or I go, and I think you need me more." They told it as a reminder that courage comes in many forms, that love can bloom in the darkest circumstances, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose to stand beside someone when the whole world is against them. And so the story lived on, passed from grandparent to grandchild, a testament to the enduring power of love and the strength of the human spirit. It was a story of the Wild West, of a time when justice was hard to come by and survival required grit and determination. But more than that, it was a story of two people who found each other against all odds, who built a life together that was richer and more meaningful than anything they could have achieved alone. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the money or the land or the success, but the love. The deep, abiding, unshakable love that had sustained Lily and Ryder through 4 decades of marriage, that had given them strength in their darkest moments and joy in their brightest. It was a love that had transformed them both, that had made them better people, that had given their lives meaning and purpose. And it all started with a cowboy who looked at a woman in a jail cell and saw not a criminal but a person worth fighting for, worth standing up for, worth loving. He had taken a stand when no one else would, had put everything on the line for a stranger, and in doing so had found the love of his life. Lily had taken a chance on him, had trusted him when she had no reason to trust anyone, and together they had built something beautiful. Their story was one for the ages, a tale of love conquering all, of courage in the face of adversity, of two people who refused to let the world break them. It was a story that deserved to be remembered, to be told and retold, so that future generations would know what true love looks like, what real courage means, and how powerful it can be when two people stand together against the world. The ranch that Lily and Ryder built still stands today, passed down through the Dalton family, a living monument to their love and their legacy. The house has been expanded and modernized, but the original structure remains, a reminder of humble beginnings and the power of hard work and dedication. The land is still worked by Dalton descendants, still produces cattle and crops, still provides for the family as it has for over a century. And on that hill where Lily and Ryder rest, their descendants still come to visit, to lay flowers, to tell their children the story of how it all began. They speak of courage and love, of standing up for what is right even when it costs you everything, of building a life with someone who sees you for who you truly are and loves you anyway. They speak of a time when the West was still wild, when survival required strength and determination, when love was something you fought for, not something that came easily. The story of Lily and Ryder Dalton is a reminder that the greatest love stories are not the ones without obstacles, but the ones where two people face those obstacles together and emerge stronger on the other side. It is a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love, choose to stand up, choose to fight for what you believe in even when the whole world tells you to back down. And so their story continues, living on in the hearts and minds of everyone who hears it, a testament to the enduring power of love, the strength of the human spirit, and the possibility of redemption and new beginnings. It is a story that belongs to the ages, a classic tale of the Wild West and the people who carved out lives in that harsh and beautiful land. Lily Grace and Ryder Dalton lived their lives with integrity and love, built a family that has endured for generations, and left behind a legacy that will never be forgotten. They proved that one person standing up for what is right can change everything, that love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, and that together, two people can overcome anything. Their story is complete, their love fulfilled, their legacy secured. And that, in the end, is the greatest happy ending of all.